Judge Richard Hale sat behind the bench, his face carved from stone. His eyes burned with something that went beyond professional duty. This wasn't just another case. This was personal. In the defendant's chair sat Elliot Vance, a 32-year-old high school English teacher. His hands trembled. His lawyer whispered something, but Elliot didn't hear it. He was staring at the back of the room where Samantha Hale sat with her head down, refusing to meet his eyes. "Mr. Vance," the judge's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You stand before this court accused of emotional manipulation, psychological abuse, and the deliberate destruction of another human being's mental health." Elliot opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "You didn't use your fists," Judge Hale continued, his voice rising. "You didn't leave bruises, but you left scars far deeper than any weapon could create. You took advantage of my daughter's vulnerability. You used her trust. You destroyed her." "Your Honor, that's not—" Elliot's lawyer tried to interrupt. "Silence!" The judge slammed his gavel. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Elliot felt his chest tighten. This wasn't how justice worked. There were no physical injuries, no threats, no violence, just words, just emotions. Just what? A relationship that ended badly? "The evidence presented in this trial," Judge Hale said, his jaw clenched, "proves beyond any doubt that you engaged in a pattern of manipulative behavior designed to control, isolate, and ultimately harm Samantha Hale." The jury nodded. Every single one of them. 12 people who had decided his fate in less than 3 hours. "Therefore," the judge's voice dropped to a deadly calm, "I sentence you to 20 years in state prison, without possibility of parole, for the first 10 years. The courtroom erupted. Elliot's mother screamed. Reporters rushed toward the front. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. And then Elliot did something no one expected. He lunged forward, not toward the judge, toward Samantha. "Tell them," he shouted, his voice breaking. "Tell them the truth. You know what really happened." Bailiffs tackled him before he reached the railing. His body hit the floor hard. Someone's knee pressed into his back. His lawyer was yelling. His mother was crying. And through it all, Elliot kept screaming, "Samantha, please tell them." But Samantha Hale never looked up. She sat frozen, tears streaming down her face as they dragged Elliot Vance away. The headlines the next morning were vicious. "Teacher attacks victim in court. Violent outburst proves guilt, says judge. Monster finally exposed." Within 48 hours, the video had gone viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone knew the truth. Except, what if they didn't? 3 months later, a woman named Grace Nolan sat in a small coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, watching that same courtroom video on her laptop for the 17th time. Grace was a documentary filmmaker. She specialized in wrongful convictions, cold cases, stories the system wanted buried. And something about this case didn't sit right. She paused the video at the exact moment Elliot's face appeared on screen. His expression wasn't rage, it wasn't violence, it was desperation. Grace leaned back and stared at the frozen image. "What really happened between you two?" she whispered. Grace Nolan had learned one thing in her 15 years of investigative journalism. The truth never looks like what people expect. She'd exposed corrupt politicians, freed innocent prisoners, and torn apart cases that seemed ironclad. And every single time, it started the same way. With a feeling, a nagging voice that said, "Something's wrong here." The Elliot Vance case gave her that feeling. She spent the next 2 weeks digging, court transcripts, news articles, social media, posts, police reports, everything she could find about Elliot Vance and Samantha Hale. What she discovered surprised her. Elliot Vance wasn't a monster, at least not on paper. He'd been teaching English at Riverside High School for 6 years. His student reviews were glowing. "Mr. Vance changed my life. He actually cares about us. Best teacher I ever had." Parents loved him. The principal had nominated him for Teacher of the Year twice. And Samantha Hale? She wasn't just the judge's daughter. She was a 28-year-old graduate student studying psychology at Portland State University. Smart. Accomplished. But according to medical records Grace managed to obtain through a confidential source, Samantha had been hospitalized twice for severe depression. The first time was 4 years ago. The second was 8 months before the trial. Grace made a note. What triggered the second? Hospitalization. She kept digging. The relationship between Elliot and Samantha had started 2 years earlier, at a community fundraiser for mental health awareness. Elliot had volunteered. Samantha had been a speaker, talking openly about her struggles with depression. According to witnesses Grace interviewed, they'd connected immediately. They'd just clicked, said Maria Contreras, a volunteer who'd been there that night. Samantha was usually so guarded, you know, but with Elliot she opened up. It was actually really sweet. Did it seem manipulative? Grace asked. Maria frowned. Manipulative? No, it seemed real. He listened to her, really listened. Not a lot of people do that. Grace tracked down more people who'd known them as a couple, friends, co-workers, neighbors. The story was consistent. They seemed happy, normal, in love. Elliot was crazy about her, said David Park, another teacher at Riverside High. He'd talk about her all the time, how smart she was, how brave. He was planning to propose, actually. Showed me the ring and everything. Grace's pen stopped moving. He was going to propose? Yeah, 2 weeks before everything fell apart. What happened? David shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. One day everything was fine. The next day, Samantha stopped returning his calls. Blocked him on social media. Elliot was devastated. He kept asking me what he did wrong. Grace leaned forward. And did he do something wrong? Not that I saw, but then that video came out and David trailed off. I guess I didn't know him as well as I thought. The video. Grace had watched it dozens of times now. It had been posted anonymously to multiple social media platforms on the same day, March 14th, exactly 3 weeks before Elliot's arrest. The video showed Samantha in what looked like her apartment sitting on the floor, crying. Her makeup was smeared. Her voice was broken. I trusted him, she said between sobs. I told him everything. My fears, my past, my trauma. And he used it. He used all of it against me. The camera was shaky, like someone was filming with a phone. Samantha looked directly into the lens. He made me feel like I was crazy, like everything was my fault. He'd say things and then deny he ever said them. He'd twist my words, gaslight me, make me question my own reality. She wiped her eyes. I thought he loved me. But he was just playing a game and I was losing my mind. The video ended abruptly. Within hours, it had been shared over 100,000 times. Comments poured in. Believe survivors. Emotional abuse is real abuse. Lock him up. The public had already decided. Elliot Vance was guilty. But Grace noticed something. She played the video again, this time watching Samantha's eyes, the way she glanced to the left before speaking, the way her voice changed tone in certain moments, the way she seemed to be reading something. Grace zoomed in on the reflection in the window behind Samantha. There was someone else in the room. Who's filming this? Grace muttered. She saved a screenshot and sent it to a forensic video analyst she'd worked with before. Then she called Riverside High School and asked to speak with the principal. I'm doing a documentary about teacher-student relationships and professional boundaries, Grace lied smoothly. I'd love to get some background on your policies. The principal, a woman named Helen Bartow, agreed to meet. 2 days later, Grace sat in Helen's office, a small room filled with student artwork and motivational posters. Elliot Vance was one of my best teachers, Helen said, her voice heavy with regret. I still can't believe what happened. Did you see any warning signs? Grace asked. No, that's what's so disturbing. He was professional, kind, never a single complaint in 6 years. Not one? Helen hesitated. Well, there was something. There was. About a month before his arrest. Grace's pulse quickened. What was it? Another teacher reported seeing Elliot arguing with someone in the parking lot after school. A man. They were shouting. It looked intense. Did anyone identify the man? No. But I asked Elliot about it the next day. He said it was a personal matter and that it was handled. And you believed him? I didn't have a reason not to. Helen looked down at her hands. Maybe I should have pressed harder. Grace made a note. Who was the man? After the meeting, Grace sat in her car and pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her notes, trying to piece together a timeline. 2 years ago, Elliot and Samantha meet. 18 months ago, they start dating. 8 months ago, Samantha is hospitalized for depression. 1 month before arrest, Elliot argues with an unidentified man. 3 weeks before arrest, the video is posted. Day of arrest. Elliot is charged with emotional abuse. Something was missing. A piece that connected everything. Grace's phone buzzed. It was her forensic analyst. You were right, he said. That video was edited. There are at least 4 separate cuts. And the timestamp metadata, it's been scrubbed. Grace felt a chill run down her spine. Someone wanted that video to look spontaneous, the analyst continued, but it was staged, carefully. Can you tell who filmed it? Not from the video alone, but I can tell you this. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. Grace thanked him and, hung up. She stared at the photo of Elliot Vance on her laptop screen, the man in the courtroom who'd screamed for Samantha to tell the truth. What aren't they telling us, Elliot? She whispered. And then she saw it. In the background of one of the social media photos from the mental health fundraiser, there was a man standing near Samantha, older, distinguished, watching her with an intensity that made Grace uncomfortable. She zoomed in. The man was wearing a judge's robe. Richard Hale had been at the event where his daughter met Elliot Vance. He'd been there from the beginning. Grace couldn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her mind. The edited video, the mysterious man in the parking lot, Judge Hale watching his daughter at that fundraiser 2 years ago. Every instinct she'd honed over 15 years of investigative work was screaming at her. This case was built on lies, but proving it, that was another story. The next morning, Grace drove to Portland State University. If she wanted to understand Samantha Hale, she needed to talk to people who knew her outside of her father's shadow. The psychology department was housed in an old brick building on the edge of campus. Grace found the department office and asked to speak with Samantha's academic advisor. I'm sorry, the administrative assistant said politely. Dr. Chen doesn't give interviews about students. It's not an interview, Grace said, sliding her card across the desk. It's about a documentary I'm working on, about mental health advocacy. Samantha was a speaker at a fundraiser 2 years ago, and I'd love to get some context about her work in the field. The assistant hesitated, then picked up the phone. 5 minutes later, Grace was sitting across from Dr. Patricia Chen, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an air of professional caution. I can't discuss Samantha's academic record, Dr. Chen said immediately. I understand. I'm more interested in her advocacy work, her public speaking about depression. That takes courage. Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. Yes, it does. Samantha was very passionate about destigmatizing mental illness. Is, Dr. Chen corrected quickly, though she withdrew from the program several months ago. Grace's pen paused. She dropped out? Took a leave of absence, for personal reasons? When exactly? Dr. Chen consulted her computer. March 17th, just over 8 months ago. 3 days after the video was posted. 3 weeks before Elliot's arrest. Grace kept her expression neutral. That must have been difficult for her. She was close to finishing, wasn't she? She only had 1 semester left. Dr. Chen frowned. Between you and me, I was worried about her. She seemed different in those final weeks. Withdrawn, anxious, not herself. Did she mention any problems? Relationship issues? Dr. Chen's face closed down. I really can't discuss that. But her eyes said everything. Yes, she knew something. Grace thanked her and left, but as she walked across campus, her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Grace Nolan? A woman's voice, young, nervous. Yes, who's this? I can't say, but I know you're looking into the Elliot Vance case. Grace stopped walking. How do you know that? I have a friend who works at Riverside High. She said you were asking questions. The woman paused. I need to tell you something, but not over the phone. Can you meet me? Where? Pioneer Courthouse Square. 1 hour. I'll be wearing a blue jacket. Come alone. The line went dead. Grace stood in the middle of campus, her heart pounding. This was either a breakthrough or a trap. She went anyway. Pioneer Courthouse Square was crowded as always. Tourists, street performers, office workers on lunch breaks. Grace scanned the plaza, looking for a blue jacket. There, a young woman sat on the edge of the fountain, her hands clutched around a coffee cup. She looked about 25, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her eyes darted nervously across the square. Grace approached slowly. Blue jacket? The woman jumped slightly, then nodded. Sit down. Don't look at me directly. Grace sat beside her, facing forward. Who are you? My name is Claire. Claire Morrison. I was Samantha's roommate before everything happened. Grace's pulse quickened. Go on. I need you to understand something first, Claire said, her voice barely young. Above a whisper. I care about Sam, I really do. But what happened to Elliot, it's not right. What do you mean? Claire took a shaky breath. The video, the one that went viral. I was there when they made it. Grace felt her stomach drop. They? Samantha and her father, Judge Hale. Claire's hands trembled around her cup. He came to our apartment that night, March 14th. I was in my room, but I could hear everything. He was coaching her, telling her what to say, how to say it, making her do take after take until it sounded right. Did you see him filming? No, but I heard him. More. Emotion, Samantha. You need to sound broken, make them feel it. That's what he kept saying. Grace's mind raced. Why would he do that? Claire finally looked at her. Her eyes were red. Because he hated Elliot. From the moment Sam brought him home. Judge Hale couldn't stand that his daughter was dating a public school teacher, someone without status, without connections. That's not enough to fabricate abuse charges. It is when your daughter tries to hurt herself, Claire said quietly. The world seemed to stop. What? Sam's second hospitalization, 8 months ago. Claire's voice cracked. It wasn't because of Elliot. They'd just gotten engaged. She was happy, happier than I'd ever seen her. Then what happened? Her father found out about the engagement. He lost it, told Sam she was throwing her life away, that Elliot was using her, that she was too damaged to make good decisions. Claire wiped her eyes. He said terrible things, things a father should never say. And Sam, she broke. She took pills, a lot of them. Grace felt sick. Judge Hale drove his own daughter to a suicide attempt and then blamed Elliot for it. Claire's voice turned bitter. He convinced Sam that Elliot had manipulated her, that her feelings weren't real, that everything was gaslighting and control. He got her therapists who reinforced that narrative. He isolated her from anyone who disagreed. And slowly, over months, he rewrote her memory of the relationship. That's psychological abuse. I know, but who's going to believe that? He's a respected judge. She's his daughter. And Elliot? Claire shook her head. He's just a teacher who got in the way. Grace's hands clenched. Why didn't you come forward during the trial? I tried. Claire's voice broke. I went to Elliot's lawyer. I told him everything. But then Judge Hale found out. He came to my apartment, alone, late at night. She pulled up her sleeve. Grace saw a faint bruise, weeks old but still visible. He didn't threaten me with words, Claire said. He didn't have to. He just made it clear. If I testified, I'd regret it. My career, my family, everything I cared about. He has connections everywhere, the police, the DA's office, the media. So you stayed silent. I'm a coward, Claire whispered. I let an innocent man go to prison because I was scared. You're here now. Claire looked at her, tears streaming down her face. Because I can't live with myself anymore. Every night I see Elliot's face in that courtroom, screaming for Sam to tell the truth, and I did nothing. Grace reached into her bag and pulled out a small recording device. Tell me everything, on record, names, dates, details. I'll protect your identity, but I need your testimony. Claire stared at the device. Her hands shook. He'll destroy me, she whispered. He's already destroying innocent people, Grace said firmly. Help me stop him. For a long moment, Claire sat frozen. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay. But you need to know something else. What? Elliot wasn't the first. Grace's blood ran cold. What do you mean? 5 years ago, Sam dated someone else. Another man her father didn't approve of. A journalist. He was investigating corruption in the local court system. What happened to him? Claire's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He lost his job, his reputation, everything. Judge Hale made sure of it. And Sam? She doesn't even remember him clearly anymore. Her father convinced her that relationship was abusive too. Grace felt a chill run down her spine. Judge Hale has been controlling his daughter's life for years, Claire said. Anyone who gets close to her, anyone who might take her away from him, he eliminates them. And no one's ever stopped him? How? He's a judge. He knows exactly how to use the system. He knows every loophole, every pressure point, every way to make someone disappear without ever breaking the law himself. Grace looked across the square, watching people go about their ordinary lives, completely unaware of the corruption festering in the system meant to protect them. What's the journalist's name? She asked. Marcus Webb. He lives in Seattle now. Last I heard, he was working at a small community paper. His career never recovered. Grace made a note. I'll find him. Claire stood up, her coffee cup still clutched in her hands. Be careful, Ms. Nolan. Judge Hale doesn't just ruin careers, he enjoys it, and if he finds out you're investigating him, I'll be careful. Claire started to walk away, then turned back. One more thing. The man Elliot was arguing with in the parking lot, the one nobody could identify? Yeah, that was Assistant District Attorney Brian Kern. He's Judge Hale's godson, and he's the one who prosecuted Elliot's case. Then Claire disappeared into the crowd, leaving Grace alone with a truth that was far darker than she'd imagined. Judge Richard Hale hadn't just framed one innocent man. He'd been doing it for years. Grace spent the next 3 days in a coffee shop across from the county courthouse watching. She'd learned long ago that understanding powerful people meant understanding their patterns, where they went, who they talked to, how they moved through the world. Judge Richard Hale arrived every morning at exactly 7:45 a.m., black sedan, driver who waited by the curb. Expensive suit, always perfectly pressed. He walked with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. But Grace wasn't interested in his public persona. She wanted to know who he was when the cameras weren't watching. On the third day, she followed him. After court adjourned at 5 p.m., Judge Hale didn't go home. Instead, his driver took him to an upscale restaurant in the Pearl District. Grace waited outside, camera ready. 20 minutes later, another man arrived. Grace recognized him immediately from her research. Assistant District Attorney Brian Kern. She snapped photos through the window. The two men sat close, speaking in low voices. Kern looked nervous. Judge Hale looked calm, controlled. At one point, Hale reached across the table and squeezed Kern's shoulder. The gesture seemed paternal, but Grace noticed how Kern flinched slightly. Not affection, control. After an hour, they left separately. Grace considered following Kern but decided against it. She had enough to confirm Claire's story. Judge Hale and the prosecutor who convicted Elliot Vance were close. Very close. Too close for a case that was supposed to be impartial. That night, Grace booked a flight to Seattle. If Marcus Webb, the journalist Judge Hale had destroyed 5 years ago, was still alive and willing to talk, she needed to hear his story. She found him working the night shift at a community newspaper in a rundown neighborhood south of downtown. The office was small, cramped, smelling of old coffee and printer ink. Marcus Webb was 42, but he looked older. Gray streaked his hair, deep lines carved his face. When Grace introduced herself, his expression cycled through recognition, fear, and finally resignation. "I was wondering when someone would finally connect the dots," he said, quietly. They talked in a 24-hour diner down the street. Marcus ordered coffee he didn't drink and stared at his hands while Grace recorded. "I met Samantha at a gallery opening," he began. "She was 23. Smart. Funny. We clicked immediately. Started dating. It was good. Really good. For about 6 months. Then what happened? Her father." Marcus's jaw tightened. At first he was polite. Distant, but polite. Then I published an article about sentencing disparities in the Portland court system. Nothing that named him specifically, but it questioned the objectivity of certain judges. Let me guess, he took it personally. He invited me to dinner, just him and me. Told Samantha it was so we could get to know each other better. Marcus laughed bitterly. The entire meal, he interrogated me. My background, my education, my salary, my family. Every question was designed to make me feel inferior. And then he told me very calmly that I wasn't good enough for his daughter, that Samantha had fragile mental health and needed someone who could provide stability, someone with real prospects. Grace's pen moved across her notepad. How did Samantha react? She wasn't there. That was the point. He wanted me to end it myself, said it would be kinder than making Samantha choose between us. Marcus finally looked up, but I didn't end it. I told Samantha what her father said, and she stood up to him, said she loved me, that she was an adult and could make her own choices. That must have infuriated him. It did. But Judge Hale doesn't get angry the way normal people do. He gets strategic. Marcus's voice dropped. 2 weeks later, I was assigned to cover a corruption investigation involving a city council member. I'd been working on it for months. Had sources, documents, everything. What happened? My sources disappeared. All of them. Stopped returning calls. Stopped answering emails. One of them sent me a single text. "I'm sorry. I can't help you." Then nothing. Grace felt a chill. Judge Hale got to them. Every single one. Then my editor called me in. Said the paper was getting pressure from advertisers. That my reporting was too aggressive. That I needed to tone it down. "They fired you?" "Not directly. They moved me to lifestyle coverage. Reassigned all my investigative work. Made it clear I had no future there." Marcus's hands clenched. "I quit. Tried to get hired at other papers, but everywhere I went the answer was the same. We've heard concerns about your journalistic ethics. We don't think you're a good fit. We're going in a different direction." He blacklisted you. Completely. Within 6 months I was broke. Couldn't get work anywhere in Portland. Had to move to Seattle just to find something. Marcus looked at her with hollow eyes. "I lost my career, my reputation, everything I'd worked for. What about Samantha?" Marcus's face twisted with pain. "She stopped calling. Stopped answering my messages. When I finally saw her again, months later by accident, she looked right through me, like I was a stranger. He convinced her you were the problem. He told her I was using her to get access to his connections, that I was manipulating her, that everything between us was fake." Marcus's voice cracked. "And she believed him, or he made her believe him. I'm still not sure which is worse." Grace reached across the table. "Marcus, I need you to go on record. Tell this story publicly. Help me expose what Judge Hale has been doing." Marcus pulled his hand back. "No. You could help free an innocent man. I know, and I'm sorry for him, I really am." Marcus stood up. "But I have a daughter now. She's 8 years old, and I will not risk her life so you can chase a story." "Her life? You think he'd—" "Yes," Marcus said firmly. "I think Judge Richard Hale is capable of anything. and I will not give him a reason to look in my direction ever again." He dropped a $10 bill on the table. "I'm sorry, Ms. Nolan. Find another way." He walked out into the night, leaving Grace alone with her coffee and a growing sense of dread. Grace flew back to Portland the next day. Morning. On the plane, she reviewed everything she had so far. Claire's testimony about the staged video, Marcus's story of being systematically destroyed, photos of Judge Hale and Ada Kern meeting privately, the edited metadata on Samantha's viral video, a pattern of control, manipulation, and abuse spanning at least 5 years. It was enough to raise serious questions, but was it enough to reopen Elliot's case? Grace wasn't sure. She needed something harder, something undeniable. When she landed, she had a message from her forensic video analyst. "Call me. Found something interesting." Grace called from the airport. "I did a deeper analysis of that video," he said. "The one with Samantha. I pulled the audio track and ran it through some filters. And there's a second voice, very faint, almost inaudible, but it's there. Someone was speaking to her off camera while she was crying." Grace's heart raced. "Can you isolate it?" "I tried. It's mostly mumbled, but I got one phrase clearly. Again, with more pain this time." Grace felt her stomach turn. "That's coaching. That's someone directing her performance. That's what it sounds like to me. I can send you the enhanced audio file." "Do it. And can you identify the voice?" "Not definitively, but it's male. Older. Authoritative tone. Judge Hale." Grace thanked him and hung up. Then she sat in the airport terminal, staring at her phone, wrestling with the weight of what she was uncovering. This wasn't just about one wrongful conviction. This was about a predator in a judge's robe, using the system to destroy anyone who threatened his control over his daughter. And that predator was still on the bench, still sentencing people, still wielding power. Grace opened her laptop and started drafting an email. To Elliot Vance's lawyer. She needed to lay out everything she'd found, build the case for an appeal. But before she could finish, her phone rang again. Unknown number. "Grace Nolan?" "Yes." "This is Helen Bartow from Riverside High School. We spoke last week." "I remember. Is everything okay?" Helen's voice was shaking. "I need to talk to you, in person, as soon as possible." "What's wrong?" "I found something. In Elliot's personnel file. Something that was added after his arrest. Something that doesn't make sense." Grace grabbed her bag. "Where are you?" "At the school, but please hurry. I think someone knows I'm looking." "I'm on my way." Grace ran through the terminal, her mind racing. What could be in Elliot's file? And why would Helen sound so frightened? She caught a taxi outside the airport. "Riverside High School." "Fast." The driver merged into traffic. Grace watched the city blur past, her instincts screaming that she was running out of time. Whatever Helen had found, it was important. Important enough that someone wanted it hidden. The taxi pulled up to the school 20 minutes later. Grace paid and rushed to the front entrance. The building was dark. School had ended. Hours ago. She tried the front door. Locked. "Helen?" she called out, knocking. No answer. Grace pulled out her phone and dialed Helen's number. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. "Helen, it's Grace. I'm here. Where are you?" She walked around the building, trying other doors. All locked. But when she reached the back entrance near the parking lot, she found one propped open with a small rock. Grace hesitated. Every instinct told her this was wrong, but Helen was inside, and she was scared. Grace pushed the door open and stepped into the darkened hallway. "Helen?" Her voice echoed. Off the lockers. Somewhere in the building, a clock ticked. Grace walked deeper into the school, her footsteps too loud in the silence. She passed empty classrooms, bulletin boards covered with student work, all of it cast in shadow. She reached the administrative offices. The door was ajar. "Helen, are you here?" Grace pushed the door open. The office was empty, but Helen's purse sat on the desk, her phone beside it. The screen was lit up with Grace's missed call. Grace felt her blood run cold. Helen wouldn't leave without her phone, not if she was scared. And then Grace saw it. Papers scattered across the floor. File folders opened and rifled through, and in the center of it all, a single document lying face up. Grace picked it up. It was a formal complaint, dated 3 months before Elliot's arrest, signed by a student's parent. The complaint accused Elliot Vance of inappropriate emotional attachment to a female student. But Grace recognized the signature at the bottom. It was Judge Richard Hale's handwriting, and the complaint was about his daughter, Samantha, who had never been Elliot's student. Grace's hands trembled as she read the document. It was fabricated, planted in Elliot's file after the fact to create a pattern of misconduct. This was the evidence that had convinced the jury, the proof that Elliot had a history of manipulation, and it was a complete lie. Grace pulled out her phone to photograph the document, but before she could, the lights went out. She froze. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, slow, deliberate, coming closer. "Ms. Nolan," a man's voice called out, calm, cold. "I think it's time we had a conversation." Grace's finger hovered over the camera button on her phone. The footsteps grew closer, her heart hammered against her ribs. "There's no need to be afraid," the voice continued. "I just want to talk." She recognized that voice. She'd heard it in courtroom footage. Calm, measured, the voice of authority. Judge Richard Hale. Grace quickly snapped 3 photos of the fabricated complaint, then slipped the document into her bag. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness. Moonlight filtered through the window, casting long shadows across the office. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. "I know you're in there, Ms. Nolan, and I know what you're looking for." Grace's mind raced. The back exit was too far. The only way out was through the door, where he was waiting. She wasn't trapped, not yet, but she was cornered. "Where's Helen Bartow?" Grace called out, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Mrs. Bartow is fine. She had a family emergency. She asked me to meet you instead." A lie, Grace could hear it in his tone. "Then why are the lights off?" A soft chuckle. "Power failure happens in old buildings. You know how it is." Another lie. Grace moved slowly toward the window. "Why are you here, Judge Hale?" "I could ask you the same question. It's after hours. You're trespassing on school property, going through confidential personnel files." His voice remained pleasant, conversational. "That's actually a crime, Ms. Nolan. So is fabricating evidence." Silence, long and heavy. When Judge Hale spoke again, the friendliness was gone. "I don't know what you think you've found, but I'd suggest being very careful about what accusations you make. I found the complaint you planted in Elliot Vance's file, the one you backdated to make him look guilty. That complaint was filed through proper channels. By you, about your own daughter, who was never Elliot's student. My daughter took his summer writing workshop 2 years ago. It's all documented." Grace felt a chill. Of course he'd covered his tracks. He'd probably created fake registration records, attendance sheets, everything needed to support the lie. "You're good at this," Grace said. "Building false narratives, making innocent people look guilty. How many lives have you destroyed, Judge?" "I've dedicated my career to justice. You've dedicated your career to controlling your daughter." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You don't know anything about my relationship with Samantha. I know you drove her to attempt suicide. I know you staged that video. I know you've been systematically eliminating anyone who gets close to her." Grace's voice hardened. "And I know you sent an innocent man to prison because he dared to love her." Another long silence. Then Judge Hale stepped into the doorway. Grace could see his silhouette now, backlit by the emergency exit sign in the hallway. Tall, imposing, blocking her only escape route. "Let me tell you a story, Ms. Nolan." His voice was soft now, almost gentle. "About a father who loved his daughter more than anything in the world. A daughter who was fragile, broken, who tried to hurt herself when she was just 16 years old." Grace said nothing. That father made a promise. He would protect her, always, no matter what it cost. Judge Hale took a step into the room, and then men started coming into her life, men who saw her vulnerability as an opportunity, who manipulated her, used her, made her worse. That's not what happened with Elliot, isn't it? She was hospitalized twice while she was with him, twice. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, started talking about death again. His voice rose slightly. So yes, I intervened, as any father would. You framed him. I saved her. You're still controlling her. She's 28 years old and you won't let her live her own life. Judge Hale moved closer. Grace could see his face now in the moonlight. Cold, certain, utterly convinced of his own righteousness. My daughter is alive because of me, he said quietly, and I will do whatever is necessary to keep her safe. From men like Elliot Vance, from journalists like Marcus Webb. He paused. From documentary filmmakers like you. The threat hung in the air between them. Grace forced herself to stay calm. You can't intimidate me the way you intimidated Marcus. Can't I? Judge Hale smiled. I've already made some calls. About you, your financial troubles, your history of, let's say, aggressive investigative tactics, the complaints from subjects who felt you crossed ethical lines. Grace's stomach dropped. It doesn't matter if it's true, it matters what people believe. And I'm very good at shaping belief. He clasped his hands behind his back. By tomorrow morning, 3 news outlets will have stories questioning your credibility. By next week, your funding sources will drop. By next month, no one will take your calls. I have evidence. Evidence can be discredited. Witnesses can recant. Video can be explained. His voice was matter of fact. I've been doing this for 25 years, Ms. Nolan. I know every judge in this state, every prosecutor, every police. Chief, do you really think you can win against that? Grace's hand tightened around her phone. She needed to get out of this room, get somewhere public, somewhere safe. What do you want? She asked. I want you to stop. Walk away from this case. Delete your files. Forget you ever heard the name. Elliot Vance. And if I don't? Judge Hale tilted his head. Then I'll make sure you join him, not in prison perhaps, but destroyed nonetheless. Your reputation, your career, your ability to ever work again. He stepped closer. I can make you disappear, Ms. Nolan. Not physically, but professionally, socially, in every way that matters. Grace felt rage building in her chest. You're threatening me because you know I'm right, because you know Elliot is innocent. Innocence is a legal conclusion, not a moral one. What does that even mean? It means the law is a tool, and tools can be wielded by those who understand them. Judge Hale's expression didn't change. Elliot Vance was convicted by a jury of his peers. The system worked exactly as designed. The system you manipulated. The system I utilized. There's a difference. Grace took a step toward the window. I'm not walking away. Then you're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Judge Hale watched her for a long moment. You remind me of Marcus Webb, principled, stubborn, convinced you could expose corruption and change the world. He shook his head slowly. He thought the same thing. Look, where it got him. Maybe he just needed someone to finish what he started. Or maybe you're both fools who don't understand how power actually works. Judge Hale moved aside, creating a path to the door. Last chance, Ms. Nolan. Walk away now, and I'll forget this conversation happened. Continue. And I promise you, you will regret it. Grace walked toward the door, her legs steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. As she passed Judge Hale, she stopped and looked directly at him. You're right about one thing, she said quietly. You are good at controlling narratives, but you made one mistake. What's that? You taught your daughter that she can't trust her own reality, that her memories are unreliable, that her feelings are invalid. Grace held his gaze. But trauma has a way of surfacing, and the truth has a way of coming out. You can't control either of those things. Forever. Something flickered across Judge Hale's face, not fear, but something close to it. Grace walked past him into the hallway. Her hands shook as she moved through the darkened school, but she didn't run. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. When she reached the back exit, she heard his voice one more time. "I'll be watching you, Ms. Nolan." She pushed through the door into the cool night air, her breath coming fast now. She didn't stop until she reached her car 3 blocks away. Once inside, she locked the doors and sat in darkness, her whole body trembling. She'd just been threatened by a sitting judge, a man with the power to destroy her career with a few phone calls, a man who'd already destroyed at least 2 other people who'd gotten in his way. Grace pulled out her phone. Her first instinct was to call the police. But what would she say? A judge spoke to her in a dark school. There were no witnesses, no recording. Just her word against his, and his word carried the weight of the entire legal system. She opened her bag and looked at the photos she'd taken. The fabricated complaint, clear evidence of fraud. But Judge Hale was right. Evidence could be explained. Discredited, made to disappear. She needed more. Something he couldn't talk his way out of. Something that would force the system to act even if it didn't want to. Grace started the car and drove to her apartment. Once inside, she locked every door and window. Then she sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She had 3 leads left to pursue. Claire Morrison's testimony about the staged video, but Claire was terrified. The enhanced audio file showing Judge Hale coaching Samantha, but audio could be disputed. Helen Bartow, who'd called her to the school, but Helen had disappeared. Grace picked up her phone and dialed Helen's number again. Voicemail. She tried Helen's home number, found in the school directory. It rang 6 times, then a woman's voice answered. "Hello? Helen, it's Grace Nolan. Are you okay?" Silence. "Helen? She can't talk right now." A different voice, male. "This is her. This husband. Who is this?" Grace hesitated. "I'm a journalist. Helen called me earlier about—" "I don't know what you're talking about. My wife is sick. She's not making calls to anyone." "Sir, I spoke to her 3 hours ago. She asked me to meet her at the school. That's not possible. She's been home all evening." His voice grew suspicious. "How did you get this number?" Grace felt a pit forming in her stomach. "Is Helen there? Can I speak to her for just 1 minute?" "No, and don't call again." The line went dead. Grace sat staring at her phone. Helen hadn't called her. Couldn't have called her according to her husband. Which meant someone else had used Helen's phone to lure Grace to that school. Someone who wanted to send a message. Judge Richard Hale had orchestrated the entire encounter. The phone call, the unlocked door, the darkened office. All of it designed to show Grace exactly what she was up against, and to give him the opportunity to threaten her face to face. Grace opened her laptop and pulled up the audio file her analyst had sent. She listened to it through headphones, focusing on the faint voice beneath Samantha's crying. Again, with more pain this time. She listened again, and again, trying to hear anything else, any other detail that might be useful. And then she caught it. In the background, barely audible beneath the voices, there was music playing. A specific song. Classical. Distinctive. Grace ran the audio through a music identification app. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. It was a start, but it wasn't enough. Grace leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. She was exhausted, frightened, alone in this fight against a man who controlled the entire system, but she wasn't ready to quit. Elliot Vance was sitting in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Samantha Hale was trapped in her father's psychological prison, and if Grace didn't do something, Judge Hale would continue destroying lives. She opened a new document and began typing. The case against Judge Richard Hale, a timeline of corruption. She would build the story, piece by piece, document every lie, every manipulation, every victim. And when she had enough, when she had something undeniable, she would bring it all crashing down. But first she needed to find someone who could help her. Someone with authority. Someone beyond Judge Hale's reach. Someone who couldn't be intimidated. Grace pulled up a search engine and typed FBI Public Corruption Unit, Portland Field Office. It was time to go federal. The FBI field office in Portland occupied 3 floors of a downtown building that looked deliberately unremarkable. Grace stood outside for 10 minutes, second-guessing herself. Going to the FBI was a point of no return. Once she made this official, Judge Hale would know, and he'd escalate. But what choice did she have? She walked through the glass doors and approached the reception desk. "I need to speak with someone from the public." "Corruption Unit," she said. "I have evidence of judicial misconduct." The receptionist, a young man with a neutral expression, handed her a form. "Fill this out. Someone will call you within 5 business days." 5 days? This is urgent. Everyone's case is urgent, ma'am. Grace leaned forward. A sitting judge has been fabricating evidence, intimidating witnesses, and sending innocent people to prison. I have documentation. I need to speak with someone today. The receptionist's expression didn't change. "Fill out the form." Grace took the clipboard and sat in the waiting area. Frustration building. 5 days. Elliot didn't have 5 days. She didn't have 5 days. She was halfway through the form when a door opened and a woman in her 40s emerged. Dark suit, sharp eyes, the bearing of someone who'd spent years reading people. "Grace Nolan?" the woman asked. Grace stood. "Yes. I'm Special Agent Karen Reeves. Come with me." Grace followed her through security, down a hallway, and into a small conference room. No windows, just a table, chairs, and a camera in the corner that may or may not have been recording. Agent Reeves sat down and folded her hands. "You mentioned Judge Richard Hale. You were listening. It's our job. Now what do you have?" Grace pulled out her laptop and opened the folder containing everything she'd compiled. Judge Hale has been systematically destroying anyone who gets close to his daughter. He framed a high school teacher, named Elliot Vance, fabricated evidence, staged a viral video, used his godson, an assistant district attorney, to prosecute the case. Agent Reeves's expression remained neutral. "That's a serious accusation. I have proof." Grace showed her the photos of the fabricated complaint, the enhanced audio of Judge Hale coaching Samantha, Claire Morrison's testimony, the timeline of Marcus Webb's destruction. Agent Reeves reviewed everything in silence. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, she looked up. "This is compelling, but it's also circumstantial." "The audio isn't circumstantial. That's Judge Hale's voice telling his daughter to fake emotion for a video that sent a man to prison. Can you prove it's his voice? Without a voice print analysis from an official source, any defense attorney would tear it apart. Grace felt her frustration rising. "So what do I need?" "Direct testimony. From a reliable witness, someone who saw Judge Hale commit a crime, someone willing to testify in federal court." Agent Reeves closed the laptop. "Everything you've shown me suggests a pattern. But patterns aren't enough to arrest a sitting judge. We need evidence of a specific federal crime. Conspiracy, wire fraud, civil rights violations under color of law. He threatened me last night at Riverside High School. Were there witnesses? No. Recording? No." Agent Reeves nodded slowly. "Ms. Nolan, I believe you, personally. But belief isn't enough. The Bureau can't move on a case like this without ironclad evidence. Judge Hale has connections everywhere. If we investigate and fail, he becomes untouchable." "So you're saying there's nothing you can do?" "I'm saying we need more. A lot more." Agent Reeves leaned forward. "But I can do this. I can open a preliminary inquiry. Quietly. No raids, no subpoenas, just background work. Looking at his financial records, his communications, his associations. If there's something there, we'll find it." "How long will that take?" "Months, maybe longer." Grace felt the weight of that timeline. "Elliot Vance doesn't have months." "Then we need to find a shortcut." Agent Reeves pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This is my direct number. If you find something concrete, and I mean concrete, not suggestive, call me immediately, day or night." Grace took the card. What counts as concrete? Video of Judge Hale committing a crime, recorded confession, documentary evidence of conspiracy with another party, something a jury couldn't explain away. And if I can't find that? Agent Reeves's expression softened slightly. Then Elliot Vance stays in prison, and Judge Hale keeps his power. That's the reality we're dealing with. Grace stood. "Thank you for your time. Ms. Nolan?" Agent Reeves waited until Grace looked back. "Be careful. If Judge Hale thinks you're a threat, he won't just destroy your career. He'll come after everything. Your reputation, your finances, your freedom. Men like him don't stop until they win." "Neither do I." A ghost of a smile crossed Agent Reeves's face. "Good, because we need people like you, people who won't quit." She paused. "Just don't get yourself killed in the process." Grace left the FBI office with more questions than answers. She had an ally. Now, maybe. But without concrete evidence, the system was still stacked against her. She needed someone on the inside, someone close to Judge Hale who might crack under pressure. Brian Kern, the assistant district attorney, Judge Hale's godson. If anyone knew where the bodies were buried, it was him. Grace spent the next 2 days following Kern. His patterns were predictable. Office by 8 a.m., lunch at the same sandwich shop, home by 7 p.m., weekends at a gym downtown. On Saturday morning, Grace waited in the gym parking lot. When Kern emerged 2 hours later, sweaty and tired, she approached. "Mr. Kern, I'm Grace Nolan. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Kern froze. Recognition flashed across his face. "I have nothing to say to you. I know you prosecuted Elliot Vance. I prosecuted a lot of cases." He moved toward his car. Grace followed. "I know about the fabricated complaint in his personnel file. I know Judge Hale is your godfather. I know you two meet regularly to discuss cases." Kern stopped walking. His jaw tightened. "Those meetings are perfectly legal." "Are they?" "Because it seems like a conflict of interest when the judge's daughter is the victim and you're the prosecutor. I recused Judge Hale from the trial, after he'd already influenced the investigation, after evidence was planted, after witnesses were intimidated." Kern turned to face her, his expression hard. "You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. Help me understand why an innocent man is in prison." Elliot Vance was convicted by a jury. 12 people heard the evidence and agreed he was guilty. Evidence you and Judge Hale manufactured. Kern's face flushed. "Get away from me. I know you're scared of him. I know he controls you the same way he controls Samantha. But you have a choice, Mr. Kern. You can keep being his puppet, or you can do the right thing." "The right thing?" Kern laughed bitterly. "You think there's a right thing in this situation? You think I can just testify against a judge and walk away unscathed? The FBI is looking into him." Kern's eyes widened slightly. "Fear. You went to the FBI? And they'll be talking to you soon. When they do, you can either cooperate or go down with him. I didn't do anything wrong. You prosecuted a case you knew was false. That's conspiracy. That's a federal crime." Grace softened her voice. "But if you come forward now, if you testify about what Judge Hale made you do, they'll protect you." Kern stared at her for a long moment. She could see him calculating, weighing options, trying to find a way out. "He's my godfather," Kern said quietly. "He paid for my law school. Got me. This job. He's been like a father to me. Fathers don't force their children to commit crimes. You don't understand what he's like, what he's capable of. Then tell me." Kern shook his head. "I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't." He got in his car and drove away, leaving Grace standing alone in the high parking lot. She'd pushed him, maybe too hard. But she'd seen something in his eyes. Doubt. Guilt. Fear. Brian Kern was cracking. She just needed to push a little more. That evening, Grace received an email from an unknown address. No subject line, just a single attachment. She opened it carefully, running it through security software first. It was a scanned document. Old, handwritten notes on official stationery. The header read, Psychiatric Evaluation, Samantha R. Hale, age 16. Grace's pulse quickened as she read. Patient presents with symptoms of severe anxiety and depression, likely. Stemming from controlling home environment. Reports father's obsessive monitoring of social interactions, academic performance, and emotional state. Patient states, he won't let me make any decisions. He says I'm too broken to know what's good for me. Further down, recommend immediate family. Therapy. Father's behavior patterns consistent with coercive control. Without intervention, patient is at high risk for self-harm. The evaluation was dated 12 years ago, long before Elliot, long before Marcus. This had been going on for over a decade. Grace's phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Did you get it? A woman's voice, young, scared. Who is this? It's Claire Morrison. I sent you that file. Where did you get this? Samantha showed it to me once, years ago. She'd kept a copy hidden from her father. Claire's voice shook. After you and I talked, I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I went to her apartment. She wasn't home, but I still have a key from when we were roommates. You broke in? I found the file in a box under her bed. There's more. Years of therapy notes, journals, text messages. Claire paused. He's been controlling her since she was a child, Grace. This isn't just about Elliot. This is about a lifetime of abuse. Grace felt a chill run down her spine. Where are you now? At my apartment, but I'm scared. If he finds out I have these documents, he won't. Where's Samantha? I don't know. I haven't seen her in months. She doesn't answer my calls anymore. Grace's mind raced. Claire, I need you to send me everything. Every document, every text, everything you found. If I do this, there's no going back. I know. But this is bigger than protecting ourselves. Samantha needs help. Elliot needs justice, and Judge Hale needs to be stopped. Silence on the line, then. Okay, I'll send it, but Grace. Yeah? Promise me something. When this all comes out, when people learn what he did to his own daughter, promise me they'll get her help. Real help. Not just lock him up and leave her to deal with the trauma. Alone. Grace's throat tightened. I promise. I'm sending the files now. The line went dead. Grace sat at her desk watching her email. 5 minutes later, a message arrived. Password-protected zip file. 847 megabytes. She downloaded it and entered the password Claire had texted separately. The folder contained dozens of documents, therapy evaluations, Samantha's journals, screenshots of text conversations, medical records. Grace opened the first journal entry, dated 8 years ago. Dad says I can't see Tyler anymore. He says Tyler is dangerous, that he's manipulating me. But Tyler is the only person who makes me feel normal. The only person who doesn't treat me like I'm broken. I told Dad I love Tyler. He slapped me. Then he cried and apologized. Said he only did it because he loves me too much. Because he can't lose me. I don't know what to believe anymore. Grace flipped. Through more entries. A pattern emerged. Samantha would meet someone. Judge Hale would disapprove. He'd find reasons to destroy the relationship. When Samantha resisted, he'd manipulate her into believing the relationship was harmful. Then came the entries about Marcus. Marcus wants me to move in. With him. Dad found out. He says Marcus is using me. That journalists are parasites who only care about stories. He showed me articles about Marcus's past. Debt. A DUI 10 years ago. This is who you're choosing over me, he said. I don't know what to think. Is Marcus really that bad? Or is Dad making me see things that aren't there? 3 months later. Marcus is gone. Dad was right. He was just using me for his career. Dad proved it, showed me evidence. I feel so stupid. I can't trust my own judgment. I can't trust anyone. But Grace knew the truth. Judge Hale hadn't proved anything. He'd manufactured evidence, destroyed Marcus, and convinced Samantha it was her own fault. Then came the entries about Elliot. I met someone. His name is Elliot. He's a teacher, kind, patient, makes me laugh. For the first time in years, I feel like maybe I can be happy. I'm not telling Dad yet. I need something that's just mine. 6 months later, Elliot asked me to marry him. I said yes. I've never been so sure of anything, but I'm terrified of telling Dad. Last time I tried to leave, I can't go through that again. The final entry was dated 3 days before the video was posted. Dad knows about the engagement. He's not angry. That's what scares me. He's calm, calculating. He says he understands, that he just wants to meet with Elliot. Man to man, he said. But I know that look in his eyes. I've seen it before. Something terrible is about to happen, and I don't know how to stop it. Grace sat back, her hands shaking. This was it. The concrete evidence Agent Reeves needed. Samantha's own words, documenting years of psychological abuse and control. Proof that Judge Hale had a pattern. Proof that he'd destroyed previous relationships. Proof that the Elliot Vance case was just the latest in a long line of manipulations. Grace immediately copied everything to 3 separate drives. Then she called Agent Reeves. I have what you need, Grace said when Reeves answered. Documented evidence spanning 12 years, psychiatric evaluations, personal journals, medical records, all showing Judge Hale's pattern of abuse and control. Where did you get this? A source close to the daughter, someone willing to testify. How reliable is the source? Former roommate, best friend. She has no reason to lie. Agent Reeves was quiet for a moment. Send me everything. Encrypted. Use the secure portal I'm emailing you now. And Ms. Nolan? Yes. Don't tell anyone else about this. Not yet. If word gets out before we move, Judge Hale will destroy the evidence and the witnesses. Understood. And Grace? Good work. This is exactly what we needed. Grace hung up and began uploading the files. For the first time since she'd started this investigation, she felt something close to hope. Judge Richard Hale's wall of power was starting to crack. Grace spent the next 48 hours waiting. Agent Reeves had promised to move quickly, but quickly in federal terms could mean days, maybe weeks. Grace couldn't afford to wait passively. She needed insurance, something that would protect the evidence and the witnesses if Judge Hale discovered what was happening. She made a decision that would change everything. She called a friend at the Oregonian, Portland's largest newspaper, a senior investigative reporter named Tom Westfield. They'd worked together years ago on a corruption case in city government. Tom, I need a favor. Grace Nolan. It's been a while. What kind of favor? The kind that wins Pulitzers. She paused. But also the kind that could get you sued, possibly arrested. Tom laughed. Now I'm interested. They met at a diner in Southeast Portland. Grace brought printouts, not originals, never originals, and laid out the case piece by piece. Tom listened without interrupting. His expression shifted from skepticism to shock to anger as the story unfolded. Jesus Christ, he muttered, a sitting judge. With connections to every power structure in this state. And you have sources willing to go on record? 1. Maybe 2 if we can flip the prosecutor. Tom leaned back. This is radioactive, Grace. The paper's lawyers will have a field day. We'd need bulletproof sourcing, multiple confirmations, documents verified by experts. I have documents, journals, psychiatric evaluations, audio recordings. From legal sources? Grace hesitated. Mostly. Mostly doesn't cut it. If even one piece of evidence is obtained illegally, the whole story collapses. Worse, we could face charges. So you won't run it? Tom drummed his fingers on the table. I didn't say that. I'm saying we need to be smart, strategic. We publish too early. Judge Hale buries us. We wait too long. He destroys the evidence. He met her eyes. When's the FBI moving? I don't know. Soon, hopefully. Then here's what we do. I write the story now, full investigation, names, documents, everything. But we hold publication until the FBI makes their move. Tom pulled out his phone. The moment they arrest him, or even announce an investigation, we go live. Every news outlet in the country will pick it up. He won't be able to control the narrative. Grace felt relief wash over her. You'd do that? Are you kidding? This is the story of the year. Tom's expression hardened. But Grace, if this blows up, if we're wrong about even one detail, we're not wrong. Then let's end this bastard's career. 3 days later, Grace's phone rang at 2 a.m. Grace, it's Claire. Claire's voice was panicked, breathless. What's wrong? Someone broke into my apartment. They took everything. My laptop, my files, the backup drives. Grace sat up, her heart pounding. When? Tonight. I came home from work and the door was open. Everything was ransacked. Claire's voice broke. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Nothing else was touched. Just the documents about Samantha. Are you safe? Did you call the police? No. Grace, there was a note on my kitchen table. Claire's breathing was ragged. It said, "Stop asking questions. This is your only warning." Grace felt ice in her veins. Get out of there right now. Go to a hotel, somewhere public. Don't tell anyone where you're going. What about the documents? Without them, I have copies. Everything you sent me is backed up, multiple locations. But if they come after me, they won't. You're more valuable alive than dead. Hurting you creates evidence. They're trying to scare you into silence. Claire was quiet for a moment. It's working. I know, but you're stronger. You're than this. We both are. Grace, I can't testify now. If they know where I live, what I have, they can get to me any time. Grace closed her eyes. Without Claire's testimony, the documents were just paper, circumstantial. Judge Hale's lawyers would claim they were fabricated, taken out of context. She needed Claire, but she couldn't ask someone to risk their life. Okay, Grace said quietly. I understand. Just stay safe. I'm sorry. Don't be. You've already done more than anyone could ask. Claire hung up. Grace sat in darkness, anger building in her chest. Judge Hale had moved faster than expected. Someone had told him about the documents, about Claire, which meant there was a leak, either in the FBI or somewhere closer. Grace's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You've been warned. Walk away now, or the next break-in won't be so gentle. Grace stared at the message. They were watching her. They knew everything she was doing, and they were coming. Grace didn't sleep that night. She sat at her desk, blinds closed, door locked, reviewing every communication she'd had over the past 2 weeks. Who knew about Claire? Who knew about the documents? Agent Reeves, Tom, Westfield, Claire herself, and Brian Kern, who she'd confronted in the gym parking lot. Had Kern told Judge Hale? Or was there someone else? At 6 a.m., Grace's phone rang. Agent Reeves. We have a problem, Reeves said without preamble. Claire's apartment was broken into. I know, Portland PD flagged it to us overnight. Nothing was filed officially. The victim declined to report it, but neighbors called in suspicious activity. Judge Hale is erasing evidence. Or someone working for him is. Either way, we need to move faster than I'd like. Reeves paused. I need you to do something. Something difficult. What? Talk to Samantha Hale. Grace felt her stomach drop. She won't speak to me. She might, if you approach her correctly. Reeves's voice was measured. We've been monitoring her movements. She's not living with her father anymore. She has an apartment in Northwest Portland. Alone. He visits 3 times a week, but she's isolated otherwise. You want me to interview her without her father present. I want you to give her a choice. Right now, she's trapped in his narrative. Maybe, just maybe, if someone shows her there's another way, she'll take it. And if she tells her father I approached her, then we accelerate everything. But Grace, this is our best shot. If Samantha testifies against him, the case is airtight. No jury would side with a father who abused his daughter for decades. Grace closed her eyes. What if she's not ready? What if confronting her makes things worse? Then we lose. But if we don't try, we've already lost. Samantha Hale's apartment was in a modern building with security cameras and a doorman. Grace couldn't just walk in. Instead, she waited across the street in a coffee shop, watching the entrance. At 10 a.m., Samantha emerged. She wore oversized sunglasses despite the overcast sky, a long coat. Her movements were careful, controlled, like someone who'd learned to make herself small. Grace followed at a distance. Samantha walked 3 blocks to a small park. She sat on a bench overlooking a fountain, alone. Grace approached slowly, her heart pounding. Samantha? The woman turned sharply. Even through the sunglasses, Grace could see her tense. I'm Grace Nolan. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've been investigating your father's. I know who you are. Samantha's voice was flat. My father told me you'd try to contact me. Did he tell you why? He said you're trying to free a man who hurt me, that you don't care about victims, only about stories. Grace sat down on the bench, keeping distance between them. Is that what you believe? Samantha didn't answer. I've read your journals, Grace said quietly. The ones you kept hidden. The psychiatric evaluations from when you were 16. The entries about Marcus, about Elliot. Samantha's hands clenched. You had no right. You're right. I didn't. But Claire thought you needed help, and she was afraid you'd never ask for it yourself. Claire betrayed me. Claire saved you, because she loves you, because she sees what your father has done to you. Samantha pulled her sunglasses off. Her eyes were red, exhausted. You don't know anything about my father, about what he's done for me. I know he's controlled every relationship you've ever had. I know he destroyed Marcus Webb's career. I know he framed Elliot Vance. Grace's voice softened. And I know he made you believe it was your fault. All of it. Tears formed in Samantha's eyes. Elliot did hurt me. Did he? Or did your father convince you that he did? I remember. Samantha stopped, shook her head. I remember the things he said, the way he made me feel. Do you? Or do you remember what your father told you Elliot said? Samantha stood abruptly. I need to go. Wait. Grace stood too. Just answer one question, please. Samantha hesitated. When you recorded that video, the one that went viral, was someone in the room with you? Samantha's face went pale. It's okay, Grace said gently. You don't have to protect him anymore. I'm not protecting anyone. Samantha's voice cracked. I'm trying to survive. By letting an innocent man rot in prison. He's not innocent. Then why won't you look at me when you say that? Samantha's hands trembled. Because I don't know. I don't know anymore. I don't know what's real, and what he told me was real. Grace stepped closer. Samantha, I can help you, but only if you want help. Only if you're willing to tell the truth. The truth? Samantha laughed bitterly. I don't even know what that is. My father has been rewriting my memories since I was a child. Every relationship, every feeling, every decision. He tells me what I experienced, what I felt, what I should remember. She wiped her eyes. How do I know which memories are mine and which are his? We can figure that out together. But first, you have to be willing to question his version of events. Samantha looked at her for a long moment. If I do this, if I testify against him, he'll never forgive me. Maybe that's not a bad thing. He's my father. He's your abuser. The word hung between them. Heavy, undeniable. Samantha sat back down on the bench. Her shoulders shook. Grace sat beside her and waited. I've tried to leave before, Samantha whispered. 3 times. Once when I was 17. Once with Marcus. Once with Elliot. She looked at Grace. Every time he found a way to pull me back. to make me believe I needed him, that I was too broken to survive without him. You're not broken. How do you know? Because broken people don't recognize their own abuse. They don't question their reality. They don't ask for help. Grace met her eyes. You know something's wrong. That's the first step. Samantha was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, if I talk to you, if I tell you everything, can you promise he won't hurt anyone else? I can't promise that, but I can promise I'll do everything in my power to stop him. Samantha nodded slowly. Okay, I'll talk, but not here and not today. I need time to think. I understand. When you're ready, tomorrow, 2 p.m. There's a library on Burnside, 3rd floor, study room C. Samantha stood. Come alone. If I see anyone else, I'll leave. I'll be there. Samantha started to walk away, then turned back. Grace, does Elliot hate me? Grace's throat tightened. I don't think Elliot has ever hated you. Samantha's eyes filled with tears. He should. Then she disappeared into the crowd, leaving Grace alone on the bench. Grace pulled out her phone and called Agent Reeves. She's ready to talk. Grace arrived at the library 30 minutes early. She scoped every exit, every sight line, every person who might be watching. At 1:55 p.m., she entered study room C small. Glass walls, a single table with 2 chairs. At exactly 2 p.m., Samantha appeared. She looked different. Her hair was pulled back, no sunglasses. She wore jeans and a sweater, not the expensive clothes Grace had seen her in before. She looked younger, more vulnerable. Thank you for coming, Grace said. Samantha sat down and placed her phone on the table. Face down. I need to tell you something first, before we start. Okay. Elliot wasn't the problem. He was never the problem. Samantha's voice was steady now, determined. The problem was Daniel. Grace frowned. Who's Daniel? Daniel Crane, my father's law clerk. He's worked for him for 6 years. Samantha's hands clenched. He's also the man I was sleeping with when I met Elliot. Grace's mind raced. This was new information. Nothing in the court records mentioned another relationship. Tell me about Daniel. Samantha took a breath. I met him when I was 22, right after grad school. He was charming, sophisticated. My father approved of him immediately, encouraged the relationship. For the first time in my life, my father actually wanted me to be with someone. Why? Because he could control Daniel. Daniel owed everything to my father, his job, his career prospects, his future. Samantha's voice turned bitter. My father essentially chose my boyfriend for me, and I went along with it because it was easier than fighting. But you weren't happy. I was miserable. Daniel was cold, calculated. The relationship felt like a performance, like we were playing roles my father had written for us. Samantha looked down. Then I met Elliot, and for the first time I felt something real. Your father didn't approve. He was furious, but he couldn't just forbid it. I was 26 years old, so he tried a different approach. Samantha's jaw tightened. He convinced Daniel to stay in the picture, to sabotage my relationship with Elliot from the inside. Grace leaned forward. How? Text messages. From a burner phone. Pretending to be another woman interested in Elliot. Sending me evidence that Elliot was cheating. Samantha pulled out her own phone and scrolled through old screenshots. Look, these are texts I received while I was dating Elliot. They claim to be from a woman he was seeing behind my back. Grace examined the screenshots. The messages were detailed, specific, designed to trigger jealousy and doubt. But Elliot wasn't cheating. No, Daniel was creating fake evidence, making me paranoid, making me question everything Elliot said. Samantha's voice cracked, and I believed it, because my father kept reinforcing the narrative. See? I told you he wasn't trustworthy. I told you he was using you. Did Elliot know about Daniel? Not until it was too late. By the time he found out I'd had another relationship, we were already falling apart. I was accusing him of gaslighting me. He was confused, defensive. The whole thing was chaos. Samantha wiped her eyes. Daniel orchestrated all of it, under my father's direction. Grace's pulse quickened. Can you prove that? I can now. After everything happened, after Elliot was arrested, I confronted Daniel. Told him I knew what he'd done. He denied it at first, but I recorded the conversation. Samantha pulled a small USB drive from her pocket. He admitted everything. Thought I'd never use it against him because it would implicate my father, too. Grace stared at the drive. What's on there? Daniel confessing to creating fake evidence, to following Elliot, to reporting false information to my father, and, Samantha paused, to helping my father stage the video, the one that went viral. Grace felt her heart hammering. Daniel filmed it? Yes, my father directed, I performed, and Daniel operated the camera. Samantha's voice was hollow. We did 3 takes. My father kept saying I wasn't emotional enough, that I needed to sound more broken, more traumatized. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't live with it anymore. Every day I wake up and know an innocent man is in prison because I was too weak to stand up to my father. Tears streamed down Samantha's face. Elliot loved me, really loved me, and I destroyed him, because I was too afraid to say no. Grace reached across the table and took her hand. You were a victim too. That doesn't make it okay. No, but it means you deserve compassion, not just blame. Samantha pulled her hand back. I don't want compassion. I want to fix this. I want Elliot out of prison, and I want my father to face consequences. Then you need to testify, officially, to the FBI. I know. Samantha met her eyes. That's why I'm here. I'm ready. Grace pulled out her phone and dialed Agent Reeves. I need you to come to the Central Library, now. Samantha Hale is ready to, give a statement. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Keep her there. Grace hung up and looked at Samantha. Are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back. I know, but going back would mean staying trapped forever. Samantha stood and walked to the window. My father thinks I'm weak. That. I'll always choose him over the truth. Maybe I have been weak, but not anymore. 9 minutes later, Agent Reeves arrived with another agent. They escorted Samantha to a private room in the back of the library. Grace waited outside while they took her statement. 2 hours passed. Finally, Agent Reeves emerged. Her expression was grim but determined. We have enough, she said. Between Samantha's testimony, the recording of Daniel Crane, and the documents you provided, we can move forward. When? Tomorrow morning. We'll arrest Judge Hale at his home, Daniel Crane at his office. Brian. Kern will be brought in for questioning. Reeves looked at Grace. This is going to explode. Every news outlet in the country will cover it. Are you ready for that? I've been ready since day one. Good, because once this goes public, there's no containing it. Reeves paused. And Grace, you did good work, really good work. Without you, this monster would still be on the bench. Grace felt a wave of emotion. What about Elliot Vance? We'll file a motion to vacate his conviction immediately. With Samantha's testimony, the case against him collapses entirely. Reeves smiled slightly. He should be out within a week. Grace closed her eyes. Finally, after months of investigation, after threats and intimidation and sleepless nights, justice was finally coming. But as she left the library, Grace couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Judge Richard Hale had spent 25 years building his empire of control. He wouldn't go down without a fight. The FBI moved at dawn. Grace watched from her car half a block away as 3 black SUVs pulled up to Judge Richard Hale's home in Portland Heights. The house was massive, colonial style, perfectly manicured lawn, the kind of place that screamed old money and power. Agents in tactical gear surrounded the property. Agent Reeves walked to the front door and knocked. Grace's phone was recording. She'd promised Tom Westfield exclusive footage of the arrest. The door opened. Judge Hale stood there in a silk robe, coffee cup in hand. For a moment, he looked almost ordinary. Just a man having breakfast. Then Agent Reeves held up her badge and said something Grace couldn't hear from this distance. Judge Hale's expression didn't change. He didn't look surprised, didn't look afraid. He looked annoyed. He set down his coffee cup, said something to Reeves, then held out his wrists. The agents cuffed him, read him his rights, led him to one of the SUVs. As they walked him down the driveway, Judge Hale's eyes swept the street and locked directly on Grace's car. Even from 50 yards away, even through a windshield, Grace felt the weight of that stare. He knew she'd done this, and the look on his face said clearly, this isn't over. Across town, Daniel Crane was arrested at the courthouse. Grace heard about it secondhand. Agents had walked into Judge Hale's chambers at 7 a.m. and escorted Crane out in handcuffs. Brian Kern was brought in for questioning but not arrested. According to Agent Reeves, he'd lawyered up immediately and refused to cooperate. By noon, the news had broken. Prominent Portland judge arrested on federal corruption charges. Judge accused of framing innocent man. Daughter testifies against father. In shocking case, Tom Westfield's article went live at 1 p.m. Front page of the Oregonian, 10,000 words, every detail Grace had uncovered, every document, every witness. The story went viral within hours. National news picked it up. Cable news ran segments. Legal experts weighed in. Social media exploded. Public opinion shifted instantly. The same people who'd called Elliot Vance a monster were now calling him a victim. The viral video that had condemned him was now seen as evidence of manipulation. Grace's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, book deals, podcast appearances. She ignored them all, because something felt wrong. Judge Hale's arrest had been too easy, too clean. A man who'd spent 25 years controlling outcomes, manipulating systems, destroying enemies. He'd just surrendered without a fight. Grace called Agent Reeves. Something's off, Grace said. What do you mean? Judge Hale didn't resist, didn't deny anything, just stood there and let you arrest him. Some people know when they're beaten. Not him. He's a narcissist, a control freak. He wouldn't just accept defeat. Reeves was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, he has a plan, something we haven't seen yet. Well, he's in federal custody. Whatever plan he had, it's too late now. But Grace wasn't convinced. That evening, she got a call from an unknown number. Ms. Nolan, this is Dr. Patricia Chen from Portland State. We spoke about Samantha a few weeks. Go. I remember. I'm calling because Samantha asked me to reach out to you. She's at the hospital. Grace's blood went cold. What happened? She overdosed. Sleeping pills. She's stable now, but... Dr. Chen's voice broke. She left a note. It mentioned you. Grace was already grabbing her. Keys. Which hospital? Providence, Portland, 4th floor. Grace drove through red lights, her hands shaking on the wheel. She'd pushed Samantha to testify, convinced her to stand up to her father, promised her it would be okay, and now Samantha was in a hospital bed. Grace found Dr. Chen in the waiting room. The woman looked exhausted. How is she? Physically, she'll recover. Emotionally? Dr. Chen shook her head. I don't know. The note said she couldn't live with the guilt, that she'd destroyed too many lives, that she didn't deserve to be free while Elliot was still in prison. But Elliot's being released. The motion was filed this morning. I know, but Samantha doesn't see it that way. In her mind, she's unforgivable. Dr. Chen handed Grace an envelope. She asked me to give you this. Grace opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Grace, I'm sorry. I thought I could be strong. I thought I could face what I'd done. But every time I close my eyes, I see Elliot in that courtroom, screaming for me to tell the truth. And I said nothing. My father spent my whole life teaching me that I was broken, that I couldn't trust myself, that I needed him to survive. And even after everything, part of me still believes it. I don't know who I am without him. I don't know how to exist in a world where he's not pulling the strings. I hope Elliot can forgive me. I hope you can too. I'm so tired of being afraid. Samantha Grace folded the letter, her throat tight. Can I see her? Dr. Chen hesitated. She's sedated, but yes, room 412. Grace walked down the sterile hallway, past nurses and beeping machines, until she reached Samantha's room. The woman looked small in the hospital bed, an IV drip connected to her arm. Her face was pale, peaceful in unconsciousness. Grace sat in the chair beside the bed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I pushed you too hard, asked too much." Samantha didn't respond, couldn't respond. Grace stayed for an hour, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. She'd exposed corruption, freed an innocent man, brought a monster to justice, but she'd also broken a woman who was already fragile. Was it worth it? Grace didn't know anymore. Her phone buzzed, a text from Agent Reeves. "We have a problem. Judge Hale made bail. Posted by an anonymous donor. He's out." Grace felt ice flood her. "Veins. Out? Already?" She called Reeves immediately. "How is that possible? He's a flight risk. He has resources." His lawyers argued he's not a danger to the community, that he's cooperating fully. The magistrate set bail at $5 million. Someone paid it in cash within an hour. Who? We don't know yet. The payment was structured through multiple shell companies. We're tracking it, but it'll take time. Grace stood and walked to the window. He's going to run. We have an ankle monitor on him. If he tries to leave the county, you don't understand. He's been planning this. He knew he'd be arrested. He had contingencies. Grace's mind raced. Where is he now? His attorney's office downtown. He's required to check in with us every 12 hours. Grace hung up and ran to her car. She didn't know what Judge Hale was planning, but she knew one thing for certain. He wasn't done, and the real fight was just beginning. Grace drove to the courthouse archives. If Judge Hale had a contingency plan, there would be evidence somewhere in his past cases. She spent hours digging through old files. Cases he'd presided over, sentences he'd handed down, patterns of behavior. Then she found a case from 8 years ago. A wealthy businessman accused of fraud. Judge Hale had been the presiding judge. The defendant had been convicted, sentenced to 15 years. But 3 months into his sentence, the conviction was quietly overturned. Technical error. Evidence mishandled. The man walked free. Grace cross-referenced the name. The businessman now lived in the Cayman Islands. Unreachable, untouchable, and he donated heavily to judicial campaigns, including a PAC that supported Judge Hale's re-election. This was the pattern. Judge Hale didn't just destroy people. He also protected certain people, built alliances, created leverage. Grace called Agent Reeves. "I think I know who posted his bail." "Who?" Before Grace could answer, her phone buzzed. A video message from Samantha's phone. Grace opened it. The video showed Samantha in her hospital room, awake now, crying. Standing beside her bed was Judge Richard Hale. "Grace." Samantha's voice was shaking. "I'm sorry. He made me—" The video cut off. Grace's blood turned to ice. She called Reeves. "He's at Providence, Portland, 4th floor, room 412. He's with Samantha. We're on our way." Grace drove like a mad woman, running lights, weaving through traffic. When she reached the hospital, she found Agent Reeves in the hallway outside Samantha's room. "Where is he?" "Gone. Left 10 minutes before we arrived." Grace pushed into the room. Samantha sat on the bed, pale and shaking. Dr. Chen was with her. "What did he say to you?" Grace asked. Samantha looked up, her eyes hollow. "He said if I don't recant my testimony, you'll be arrested for witness tampering. He has evidence, fabricated but convincing. He'll destroy you the same way he destroyed Marcus." Grace felt her stomach drop. "I don't care what he does to me. But I do." Samantha's voice broke. "I can't let another person suffer because of me. I can't." "Samantha, listen to me. He also said something else." Samantha pulled out a small blue cassette tape from under her pillow. "He thought I was too sedated to remember. But I recorded him. On my phone, hidden under the blanket." Grace stared at the tape. "What is this?" "He brought it to threaten me. Said it was insurance. Evidence he could use if I didn't cooperate. Samantha handed it to Grace. But he left it here, forgot it when the nurses came in. Grace turned the, tape over in her hands. What's on it? Reeves asked. I don't know, Samantha said, but he called it the last piece, said it would end everything if it ever came out. Grace looked at Reeves. We need to play this. They found an old cassette player in the hospital's administration office. Grace, Agent Reeves, and Samantha gathered in a private room. Grace pressed play, static. Then voices, Judge Hale's voice, younger but unmistakable. You understand what we're doing here is necessary. Another voice, male, uncertain. I don't know if I can. You can, and you will. Because if you don't, your career ends today. But the evidence is clear. He's innocent. Evidence is what I say it is. You'll testify that you saw him at the scene. That's all the jury needs to hear. A long pause. What about his family? Irrelevant. He crossed the wrong people. This is how the world works, son. You protect the powerful. You sacrifice the expendable. The recording ended. Silence filled the room. That's a murder case, Reeves said quietly. He's coaching someone to commit perjury in a murder trial. Grace felt sick. When was this recorded? Samantha checked the tape label. 15 years ago. We need to identify the case, Reeves said. Find out who was convicted, who testified. Grace was already pulling out her laptop. Give me 10 minutes. She searched through Judge Hale's case history from 15 years ago. Murder trials. Convictions. There. State versus Marcus Chen. Convicted of second-degree murder. Witness testimony placed him at the scene. Life sentence. Marcus Chen had died in prison 3 years ago. Stabbed in the yard. He sent an innocent man to prison for murder, Grace whispered. And that man is dead. Reeves took the tape. This is evidence of conspiracy to obstruct justice, federal crime, and there's no statute of limitations on murder. Can you prove the other voice belongs to the witness who testified? Grace asked. We can try. Voice analysis, court transcripts, if we can match them. Grace's phone rang. Tom Westfield. Grace, you need to see this. Turn on the news. Now. Grace found a TV in the waiting room. Every channel was showing the same thing, a press conference. Judge Richard Hale stood behind a podium, his lawyer beside him. Cameras flashed. I want to address the false allegations that have been made against me, Judge Hale said, his voice calm and authoritative. I have devoted my life to justice, to protecting the vulnerable, to upholding the law. Grace felt rage building. My daughter is sick. She has been sick for many years, and there are people who have taken advantage of her condition to create a narrative that simply isn't true. He's calling her a liar, Samantha whispered beside Grace. On national television. I love my daughter. I have always acted in her best interest. If my protection was misinterpreted as control, I apologize. But I will not apologize for being a father. The camera zoomed in on his face. Sincere. Pained. Convincing. The charges against me are politically motivated. An attempt to undermine judicial independence. I will fight them, and I will be vindicated. The press conference ended. Grace turned off the TV. He's playing the victim, she said. And people will believe him, Reeves added. He's good at this. Samantha stood. Not if I speak. Samantha. No, he just called me sick, unreliable, a liar. Her voice was steel now. I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid. I want to do a press conference, today, and I want to tell the truth. Grace looked at Reeves. It's risky, Reeves said. His lawyers will attack her credibility. Let them, Samantha said. I have nothing left to lose. Tom Westfield arranged the press conference for 6 p.m. Every major outlet confirmed attendance. Samantha sat in front of a wall of cameras, Grace beside her for support. My name is Samantha Hale, she began, her voice shaking but clear. And my father is not the man he pretends to be. For 20 minutes she told her story. The control, the manipulation, the destroyed relationships, the staged video. Reporters asked questions. Samantha answered honestly, didn't hide, didn't deflect. By the time it ended, social media was exploding. Believe Samantha trended within an hour. But so did Stand with Judge Hale. Public opinion was split. Half saw a brave woman speaking truth. Half saw a troubled daughter attacking her father. That night, Grace received an email from the State Bar Association. We are investigating allegations that you engaged in witness tampering and unethical journalistic practices in the matter of State versus Vance. Please contact our office immediately. Then another email from her bank. Her accounts had been frozen pending investigation of suspicious financial activity. Judge Hale was making good on his threat. Grace called Agent Reeves. He's coming after me. I know, we're working on it, but Grace, he has resources we didn't anticipate, connections in places we can't reach quickly. So what do? Survive, keep your head down, let us build the case. But Grace knew there was no keeping her head down. Not anymore. She called Tom. I need you to publish everything, every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. Put it online where he can't suppress it. Grace, that could compromise the federal case. I don't care. If I wait for the system to work, he'll destroy me first. The only protection I have is public exposure. Tom was quiet. Okay, I'll have it live by midnight. Thank you. Grace hung up and sat in darkness. Her career was being dismantled, her finances frozen, her reputation attacked. Judge Hale was doing exactly what he'd promised. But Grace wasn't done fighting. 3 days later, Brian Kern walked into the FBI field office. Without his lawyer. Without warning. Agent Reeves called Grace immediately. Kern wants to talk, and he says he'll only do it if you're in the room. Grace arrived within 30 minutes. Kern sat at a table, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red, his suit wrinkled. Why am I here? Grace asked. Kern looked up. Because you were right. About everything. He pulled out a folder. These are communications between Judge Hale and me going back 5 years. He didn't just influence the Vance case. He's been manipulating prosecutions across the county, telling me which cases to pursue, which to drop, who to protect. Agent Reeves opened the folder, email printouts, text message screenshots, voice memos. Why are you coming forward now? Reeves asked. Because I'm... Next. Kern's voice cracked. He's setting me up to take the fall, making it look like I acted alone, that I'm the corrupt one. Are you? Grace asked. Kern met her eyes. Yes, but he made me that way. Taught me that power means more than truth, that winning means more than justice. He looked down. I sent an innocent man to prison because my godfather told me to, and I didn't question it because I was afraid of him. Grace felt a strange mixture of anger and pity. I can't undo what I did to Elliot Vance, Kern continued, but I can make sure Judge Hale doesn't do it to anyone else. Reeves leaned forward. We need you to testify in federal court everything you know. Kern nodded. I will, but I want immunity. We can't promise that. Then I want consideration, reduced charges, because if I go down, I'm taking everyone with me. Every judge he's influenced, every case he's touched, every person who looked the other way. Reeves and Grace exchanged glances. We'll talk to the U.S. attorney, Reeves said. That night, Grace visited Elliot Vance in prison. The motion to vacate his conviction had been approved. He was being released the next morning. Elliot sat across from her in the visitation room, looking thinner than in his photos. Older, but his eyes were clear. I don't know what to say, he said quietly. You don't have to say anything. You saved my life. Grace shook her head. I just told the truth. You saved yourself by not giving up. For a long time, I wanted to give up. Every day, especially after that courtroom. He looked down. I screamed at Samantha, begged her to tell the truth, and she just sat there. She was trapped. By him. I know that now. But back then, Elliot's voice broke. I hated her. For a long time, I hated her. Do you? Still? Elliot was quiet for a long moment. No, I pity her because she's still in a prison, just a different kind. She testified against her father. She's trying. I know. Elliot looked up. When I get out tomorrow, will you tell her something for me? Of course. Tell her I forgive her. Not because what happened was okay, but because hate is too heavy to carry anymore. Grace felt tears forming. I'll tell her. The trial began 6 months later. Judge Richard Hale faced 17 federal charges: conspiracy, obstruction of justice, civil rights violations. The evidence was overwhelming. Samantha's testimony, Brian Kern's testimony, the blue tape, the fabricated documents, years of corruption laid bare. The jury deliberated for 3 days, guilty on all counts. Judge Hale showed no emotion as the verdict was read. He stood perfectly still, jaw tight, eyes forward. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he spoke one sentence: "The system I served has betrayed me." He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Daniel Crane received 15 years. Brian Kern, in exchange for his cooperation, received 5 years and permanent disbarment. Elliot Vance walked free, his record expunged, his name cleared. But the victory felt hollow. Grace stood outside the courthouse as news cameras filmed Judge Hale being led away in handcuffs. The same man who'd once wielded absolute power was now just another prisoner. But Samantha wasn't there to see it. She'd checked herself into a long-term psychiatric facility, working through decades of trauma, learning who she was without her father's voice in her head. Grace visited her once a month. "Do you regret it?" Samantha asked during one visit. "Everything you went through to expose him?" Grace thought about it, her frozen accounts, her damaged reputation, the threats, the fear. "No," she said finally, "because the alternative was letting him keep destroying lives." "But he won," Samantha said quietly. "Even now, even in prison, he's still in my head, still controlling me. That will fade with time, with help. Will it?" Samantha looked out the window. "Or will I spend the rest of my life wondering which thoughts are mine and which are his?" Grace had no answer for that. 3 years later, Grace released her documentary, The Personal Sentence, Power, Control, and the Illusion of Justice. It won awards, sparked national conversations about judicial accountability, led to reforms. But the story's real ending wasn't in courtrooms or headlines. It was in a quiet moment Grace witnessed by chance. She was at a coffee shop when she saw Elliot Vance walk in. He looked different, healthier, at peace. He ordered coffee, turned, and froze, because sitting at a corner table was Samantha Hale. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Samantha stood, walked over, and said something Grace couldn't hear. Elliot listened, nodded, and after a pause, he reached out and shook her hand. Not a hug, not forgiveness in the Hollywood sense. Just two survivors acknowledging each other's pain. Grace left before they noticed her. Some stories don't have happy endings. They have honest ones. Judge Richard Hale died in prison 4 years into his sentence. Heart attack, quick, painless. More mercy than he'd shown anyone else. His obituaries called him controversial and complex. They didn't call him what he was, a predator who'd used the law as a weapon. But the people who knew, the victims, the survivors, the witnesses, they remembered the truth. And that, Grace decided, was the only justice that mattered. The kind that couldn't be sentenced away or buried with a body. The kind that lived in memory and testimony. The kind that said, "We saw what you did, and we won't forget."